back to my channel. So in this video, I'm going to do a Halloween October get to know me thing where basically I've done videos like this before where I'll pick a bunch of questions that are kind of like get to know me questions, and then I'll answer them and I'll talk about them and stuff like that. This video is usually when my brain capacity just isn't enough to really think about anything else other than myself, which makes me sound really self-involved. Lately I've been trying to do more videos about me doing like more research and stuff like that, but there are times where sometimes I can't focus enough to do that. So I've got my trusty colander here filled with questions. I'm probably gonna pick about 6 of them, answer them, and just kind of, you know, answer some spooky Halloween October themed questions. All right, so I'm gonna give, this is not effective, so I'm gonna just stick my little hand in there and just kind of pick one. First question. Have you ever played with a Ouija board? No, I have not, and that is not something I will screw with. It is something that I find really, really interesting, and the history on Ouija boards is really interesting, but I would never play with one because I don't want to play with something that I don't understand and toy with something that I just don't want to do that. I stay clear from it. I have a fear of potentially being hypnotized because I don't want doors in my brain to be opened that were closed and probably were supposed to stay closed. So that's the kind of thing that I don't play with that. I don't know. No. And it's not because of horror movies. Absolutely not. It's not because of horror movies. It's just because I'm smart. This was something that I've always had a fear of before horror movies started to make it more interesting, because it's just something that like you feel like it shouldn't. No. I do like things that have like Ouija board like decorations, so like rugs or necklaces or plates and stuff like that. I like that, but I would never play the game, as it were. Well, I have 2 in my hand, so I guess this is the one I'll pick next. Would you rather get bitten by a zombie or a vampire? I would rather get bitten by a vampire, and the reason for that is because if a vampire bites you, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to kill you, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to become a vampire. It just means that maybe they wanted a little snack and then they let you go, or like maybe you have a vampire friend that needs food and there's nothing around, so you're just like, whatever, I make blood all the time. But if you get bitten by a zombie, you're infected and then you become a zombie, and I don't want that. And like the potential, maybe if I become a vampire, okay, cool, I'll live for forever. You know, I guess that's something I could deal with. I wouldn't want to be a zombie. I usually tell everybody that I love, or that's my friend, that if I become a zombie, please shoot me in the head, because I don't want that. So I'd rather be bitten by a vampire. This is the next question because I picked up 2. Favorite horror monster or villain? Oh, geez. Okay. I'm gonna pick both a monster and a villain. So my favorite horror monster at the moment that I just recently realized, because so I've seen The Thing several times before, but recently I watched it with my boyfriend, and what I love about the movie is that it's a lot of body horror and a lot of practical effects. I love horror movies that have practical effects because it makes it scarier and more inventive. A lot of horror movies and any movie nowadays don't really do practical effects, so I really like The Thing. So the monster or creature in that I really like because you don't know what it is, you don't know where it is, you don't know who it's infected. It's just like this creepy creature that is there to kill, basically. And I really love the movie because it really kind of touches on humanity and what you would do if you were scared. If you were being hunted by something that you couldn't see and you didn't know what it was, what would you do, and how would you react with the people that you're close to? Like, would you react like they did, or would you try to figure it out? And I like that at the end you don't know who it is. So I find that really interesting. Villain, a horror movie villain. I would say Ghostface, but that's too obvious. I really like Jigsaw Jigsaw I find really interesting because it's coming from someone trying to make someone appreciate life, basically. When you're using your life in a way that you shouldn't be, when you're taking life for granted, and he's basically trying to make you like appreciate life because he's dying, or he died. So I find him a very smart, very interesting villain. And what's really fun, a really fun fan theory, is that Jigsaw is the kid from Home Alone, just grown up and lost his mind because of all the traps. It's really interesting. Very, very strange that I read that somewhere, and I found that really weird. What is the scariest horror game that you've played? Most of the video games that I play are horror or scary games. I prefer them for some reason. But as for the scariest horror movie or horror game I've ever played, I remember when my sister and I started playing Fatal Frame when we were younger, and I remember it's actually kind of scary. Just the suspense and that, like, you don't have any real weapons, it's just a camera. I remember we used to play that together, or like one of us would have to be in the room because we were scared. And then same thing with Silent Hill. That was pretty scary back in the day for us. There are still times where it's pretty scary for me. I remember once when I played Fear, I was climbing up a ladder and the little girl scared the shit out of me, and I ended up throwing a grenade and falling off the ladder, and then the grenade fell next to me and I blew up. That also happened, same game, but I was in a air vent and I got jump scared, pushed the buttons, and I threw a grenade and I killed myself again. But I can't really think of the scariest horror game I've ever played, but one of my favorite horror games would have to be Fatal Frame. Definitely. I just remember just like having to have a friend or my sister there to play it, because I needed the moral support. So that was probably, at the time, the scariest game I ever played. Do you see figures in your peripheral vision? All the time. When you're someone who is kind of, I made a video of this, I'm empathic, but also I've seen a lot of things and have a lot of ghost experiences. But actually yesterday, I went to, yesterday for me was the 11th, I think. But when you're watching this, it's gonna be like a week or so after. But I went to the movies by myself to just kind of take a day. I went to go see Coco because I wanted something cheerful and colorful to look at. And I was in the theater alone. There was nobody there. It was just me. And I kept seeing someone walking up the stairs to get to their seat. And so I kept looking and there was nobody there. And I kept seeing it. And it was driving me insane because I kept seeing it. And I kept thinking there was someone in the theater with me and there wasn't. So that kept happening to me. So this happens to me all the time. I'll see something out of the corner of my eye and then I'll turn to look at it and there's nothing there. So I feel like everybody's experienced that, but some people chalk it up to something else, but that's definitely, and whenever I think of that, whenever I think about seeing something out of my peripheral vision, I'm currently rewatching Doctor Who, and when it's Matt Smith's in the 11th hour, the episode The 11th Hour, when he's telling Amy to look out of the corner of her eye to see the alien. Like, that's what that reminds me of, is that, like, there's theories that you can see different things and maybe dimensions and creatures through the corners of your eye. And that's what it always makes me think of, is that Doctor Who episode. Do you prefer gore or thriller movies? So when it comes to gore, I prefer when it's practical, like effect gore. I don't like when it's like CGI gore. A lot of the time, I don't really like when horror movies have a lot of gore in it. The only movies that I think should have a lot of gore are probably like zombie movies, because it's a zombie movie, you know, people are being eaten alive. But when you're watching a horror movie and you can tell that they're relying on mostly gore in their movie, it kind of takes away from the story. I really don't like when it's just so much gore and it's not even gross anymore, it's just annoying. And so I don't like when it's, but I do like gore. But I guess for the question, I do prefer thrillers, but thrillers have their own issues too, because like, for me, when it comes to thrillers, I don't like when thrillers rely on the music to cause jump scares. Like, I don't mind the auditorial jump scares, but when it's like constant, like for example, the last Resident Evil movie was really hard to follow because the amount of jump scares, it was like jump scare, 5 minutes later jump scare, 5 minutes later jump scare, and it was like, it went from being like jump scare to like, yeah, maybe 1 or 2 of them scared me, but then the rest is like, fuck, this again, oh my god. I like when it's like a physical jump scare, like a door slamming, or like that typical someone opens their mirror to get something out of the cabinet, closes it, and there's someone behind them, like something more on the physical side, where it's just like a physical jump scare versus an auditorial jump scare. And a lot of thrillers rely more on their music to scare people than anything else. And I feel like when they rely too much on it, it loses what it is a lot. But out of the two, for the question's sake, I would say out of the two, I would prefer thrillers over gore movies. I mean, considering the fact that my favorite scary movie is Scream, which does have gore, but it's more on the thriller side, you know, I prefer that. I keep getting my nail, like, nicked by the bottom of the calendar, and it hurts. I don't know why I decided, yeah, put it in the calendar. I think it was the first, like, bold thing I saw. Favorite scary book? I have all 3 of the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Those are some of my favorites, like little scary books. Mostly, not because they're actually scary, but because my sister and I grew up with those books, and my sister used to read them to me, and so it was like a very, like, there's like a bond there. And it took me a long time to find them, and then I randomly one day found them at Savers, and I lost my freaking mind. Favorite scary book, though? I don't really know. There is a book that I listened to recently on Audible. It's called The Spook, and it's basically about the author going around as a skeptic trying to basically debunk or figure out the haunted stories in different places, and I found that really interesting. Not scary, but really interesting. But I guess, I don't know what my favorite scary book is. I haven't really listened to a scary book in a really long time. I think the last scary book I listened to was The Shining. I think that was it. So, I guess, I don't know, honestly. Alright, we're gonna do 3 more questions, and then we're gonna be done because I'm running out of storage. So, 3 more questions. Name something you wouldn't want to run into in a dark forest or an abandoned building. Speaking of Doctor Who, I watched an episode called Hide. That it has Clara and the 11th Doctor in it, and it's actually kind of creepy. It's kind of a scary episode, and there's this creature called the Crooked Man in the show. I'll save a picture and I'll put it in this video so you can see it, but it's actually kind of creepy. So when I was young, I used to have night terrors, and one of my night terrors that I used to have was about a woman who would come out of a tree and would look like a tree, and she was covered in moss, and whenever she breathed, it would sound like she couldn't breathe, and she had sharp teeth, and she was malevolent. It just wasn't, it was bad, it was awful. And so watching that episode, it really, really reminded me of those night terrors when I was little. So that's definitely a creature that I wouldn't want to, like see in the forest or in an abandoned house or an alleyway, like, at all. And what's interesting is in the episode, the Doctor sees it in the forest, and it's creepy and it's scary. The story is good, the ending is great, but it's a creepy creature when you look at it. Okay, 2 more questions. how old were you when you saw your first horror movie? I don't remember how old I was, but I do remember that one of the very first horror movies I ever watched when I was young was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I remember because my aunt let me watch it against my mom's permission, basically. My mom didn't know until I told her. But I know I was young, I just don't remember how young, but probably too young to watch that movie. I remember thinking that it was real and based on an actual true story when it's not. It's loosely based on Ed Gein, but it's not really very much based on a true story necessarily. But I was definitely too little to watch that movie. Absolutely too little. I think I watched the old one, not the newer one. So, yeah. I don't know, could explain why I'm so fucked up. Because there's this theory that people or kids who've watched horror movies from a young age, actually it messed up something in the brain, which I find really, maybe, makes sense. Last question. What is your favorite scary movie? How topical. That's a really good question to end on. My favorite I've already mentioned it. My favorite scary movie is Scream. It's like my top tier favorite scary movie that I love and adore. A lot of people ask me why, and I honestly, there's something about, like, it's just so simple. It's just two kids who are upset about their dad cheating on their mom, and then somebody else, and just a crazy psychopath child, just killing people. It's so realistic. Anybody could do that, and I think that's why I like it. But also, I've mentioned this story before, but I'm going to mention it again. So once, when my sister and I and my stepbrother were watching it, the power went out right at the part where they find Drew Barrymore's body hanging from the tree and her entrails are falling out. The power went out, and I remember hearing the sliding glass door open and seeing a guy stick his head in and then quickly pop it back out. And my sister remembers this too, so it actually happened. So the movie has a great memory attached to it, but I just love Scream. It's definitely my favorite scary. Alrighty, so it cut me off while I was talking about how Scream is my favorite movie, but I'm running out of storage, so those are 10 Halloween, October related get to know me questions. I really like doing these videos. I don't know if it's because I'm self-absorbed and like to talk about myself, but also I love videos when you get to kind of know the person you're watching. I find it really, really interesting. I love learning new things about people, and so I think that's why I like these videos so much. And for some reason I like the act of putting these in a bowl and like answering the questions. But it's really fun for me. So, and it's really chill, which is what my brain needs, is to be chill. But I'm gonna go, and I need to clean my apartment and stuff. And yeah, so thank you for joining me in this video. If you liked it, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Also, I would like to hear anybody else's answers of these questions. What's your favorite scary movie? Would you rather be bitten by a zombie or vampire? You know, those fun things. And yeah, I'm gonna go and clean and feed the cats and stuff. So I hope you have a wonderful day and a beautiful night. This is Kat signing off.